Welcome and welcome back. We took a week off only to be entering what is going to be a non-stop onslaught of fights back-to-back weekends until September 13th. UFC Nashville was kind of crazy, okay? So let me know if you were one of the people who was like me, so lost in the sauce that we knew that this one was going to be a banger. We predicted a lot of finishes. That's what we got. Yeah. We had 8 finishes in this card. Like, there was action nonstop, and every single fight that went to decision was not a snore or even anything close. We had everything. We had everything. It was an absolute treat. Oh my gosh. I mean, what a night, right? Nashville really delivered. We're going to give it a little bit of a review, talk about the implications, maybe what's next. Yeah, every fight was amazing. Literally, every fight was incredible. We started things off with strawweight, so Fatima Klein and Melissa Martinez. That one was expected to be. I mean, Fatima was the biggest favorite on the entire card by a pretty wide margin, and she was expected to win it. Okay, and spoiler alert, she did. But it was a very like scrappy, gritty, like first like start of the fight. Everything was very, very scrappy. Melissa Martinez definitely put on her typical scrap. She's a scrapper, so a loss with dignity for sure. Like she showed her heart out there, but ultimately, like Fatima was seeing things. She was able to find the openings definitely, and working with that jab and her setup, okay, for that nasty kick, our first finish of the night. She made it look like the left hand was on its way, but it was leg. It was leg town, and she snapped Melissa's neck, and it was clean. And, came in with a flurry of punches at the end just to seal the deal. What an exciting start. And Fatima, what an exciting young prospect. Definitely so hyped to see more from her because she is so clearly a rising star. So we got off to a fast start. And we stayed pretty fast. Then we had two guys who are cuckoo crazy respectfully. Okay, like with peace and love, they are cuckoo crazy in the best way possible. Mitch Ramirez and Mike Davis, lightweight baddies. You already know these are two guys, one of which speaks to themselves in third person. They're just, and one of them is Beast Boy, and so this one was gonna be wild, and it was wild. We had a wild start, and the first round was Mike Davis ended up pretty much controlling the entire time, but Mitch got a lot of, he was given some Joker faces in there because he was able to survive the submission attempts, and he was proud of that. He had a creepy little Joker smile, so the energy was high, even though there wasn't a lot happening offensively. But okay, round two, it got offensive. Yes, it did. And it was ultimately Mike who was able to, withstand the fatigue and throw on the onslaught of punches that system shut down Mitch. Okay. He got him, pushed him back against the fence, and it was bam, bam, turkey slam. And yeah, that's finish number two. Mitch went down, down. He went down, down. And that was a quirk fest, and that was pretty expected that one was going to be cuckoo crazy. And then we had another expected cuckoo crazy. Then we had a heavyweight fight, one of three of the night, and that was Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Walter Walker, our first brother. So we had Melissa Martinez, whose brother is David Martinez, sibling duo, and Walter and Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker's pretty famous for being super quirky, and now And now his brother is famous for being quirky as well because he has gotten 3 heel hooks in a row. So before the fight could even start, okay, before we could even get anywhere at all, so we already knew that Walter is a foot searcher. Like we had that on the PowerPoint that he's searching for feet, but I don't know. I did not expect this. I don't know why, but I didn't. I really didn't think he was going to get it done 3 times in a row. So, history is made with that fight. I don't think that's ever been done. So getting 3 heel hooks in the UFC has been done, but I don't think that 3 in a row has happened. So history was made. Girl, Oh my gosh, Voltaire's drama, just because that is insane. I can't wait to see what is next. It literally, the fight was less than a minute in, and somewhere he found the mistake, and Kennedy's his face. He's like it was nasty. It was nasty McGee, and that is our third finish, three in a row. Three in a row. And then we get to the last time that we're going to see Lauren Murphy dance it out in a women's flyweight versus a very young, much younger up and comer, Eduardo Moura, one of the younger folks on the card. There's a 10-year age gap in that fight, and that was a dog fight for sure. So Lauren definitely showed her durability, made it all the way to the end. That was a nice decision though. It was a competitive fight, 1-1 going into the third, and Lauren was definitely surprising Eduardo, I think, with her ability to withstand. She really does have durability. Like, she will get hit clean on the face, and she's just going to keep going. She's going to keep marching. The hunger cannot be. She can. The quit does not exist in Lauren Murphy, and that's what we saw. And unfortunately, she was not able to get to the decision because Eduardo, she found her second win. You could see she was a little tired after trying to get a finish on Lauren Murphy, but she found her second win, got back to being pretty athletic in there, got a little bit more done, so she got that third round. But that was very exciting. So we took a break from our finishes, but don't worry, we got right back to it. Oh my God. So let me know if you expected the Jake Matthews versus Chidi Njokuani to be absolute war at welterweight, because that's what I was expecting. I was expecting war. I was expecting there to be a lot of finishes, which there were, but I was also expecting the canvas to be painted in blood, and it wasn't. It was not. We did not get the blood, and I thought the blood was going to appear here, but again, the fight ended in the first round. So almost all of our finishes on this card ended in the first round, and this was another one. Jake Matthews chokes out Chidi Njokuani like we're early, okay? It's one little mix-up, and Jake is on your neck. And we did not get a war, we got a submission. Okay, so now we have 2 submissions, 2 knockouts. What an exciting night already. Then we had a very exciting veteran matchup. Another fight that I think many of us expected to be blood and war, and it was war. Okay, this was war. Chris Curtis against Max Griffin. These men, right? They put it on, and the pressure was put on. Max was on that pressure in round 1. Round 2, we carried it in there. It was hunty, it was spooky, it was dog fighty. The energy was completely there, and you could see pretty much the whole fight that Max was backing up, but he was still making things happen. So he was on the back foot, and Chris Curtis was doing his thing, making the octagon look so small. That's just something I noticed about Chris Curtis, is no matter if it's the Apex or if it's an actual full-size octagon, he's making that thing look small because he is marching. But both of these guys put on an interesting amount of pressure, and it was a toughie. It was a toughie. The significant strikes were relatively close throughout the fight, but Chris Curtis, he did a little bit more. And honestly, thank God, because the 2-fight losing streak, we hate that. We gotta break it. But both respect to both, because this was a splitty. This was absolutely a splitty, toughie. Because it was back and forth. Max may have been on the back foot, but like I said, he was putting on the pressure somehow still, and these guys just showed their veteran stuff. It was one of those, like, toe-to-toe, but not exactly, like, pure caution to the wind, okay? The hands didn't drop completely to the waist, but they came down a couple times. But that was very exciting. Again, one of our decisions that was just shining, 2 shining stars, and they created a comment. That's not how that works. And that was our featured prelim for a reason, because we can always count on those veterans to put on one heck of a performance, and they absolutely did. Then we had our main card, and the first fight was a light heavyweight. Okay, so Junior Toffa, formerly heavyweight, but making his way down. He was looking trim, slim, ready to invoke some grim. And he went against Tuco Tokos, who definitely got the better of him. Yeah, he got the better of him. It was pretty quickly on the ground, and Junior was looking like it was pretty exhausting to have Tuco on top of him, and Tuco was getting sticky, icky, and it wasn't looking good for Junior. He was being a bit scrappy, but just when it got to the ground, there was not much that he could do, it seemed. Okay, and with seconds to go in round 2, Yeah, it happened. Okay. Tuco got a very much needed win in the form of an arm triangle. Switchy McGee on that position. He got it done. Absolutely got it done. So we're back to another finish. This is insane. And then we move on to heavyweights. Okay. And our second out of 3 heavyweight fights for the night. Austin Lane versus Vito Patrino. I was expecting this one to be chaos, and oh boy, was it. Oh boy, was it. And these men are so athletic. That's what's so interesting. You know, heavyweights, they can come in many shapes and sizes. They have obviously the biggest variability of the weight that they can come in at, and just many different people find themselves in the heavyweight form. And these are two like really athletic guys, and Vitor Petrino's debut as a heavyweight, and he was looking good. He was looking body yaddy yaddy, okay? This fight, we found ourselves in nasty, fatty mount, okay? It was a fatty, sweaty mount, okay? And Vitor Petrino handed Austin Lane his first ever submission loss. Rut-row, spaghetti-o. It happened pretty quickly, okay? Because that's the reputation for Vitor Petrino. A lot happening in the first round for this guy. Winner, loss, and he got it done, and he was looking heavy in there. He seemed to do everything pretty perfectly when he was in that mount position, you know, getting some punches in, waiting for that perfect moment where Austin was doing a bit of, you know, the disconnecting of his arms with get the neck open. He got in there, and he got it in there pretty deep. I mean, Austin's legs, they were flailing. He was really getting choked out in there. So, you know, fortunately he tapped it out. Yeah, very excited to see more from both of them, but more from Vitor Petrino, who's finding his way at heavyweight. Then we had another fight that I'm sure you expected, like me, to be insane. And boy, it was it. This was crazy. Morgan Charriere versus Nate the Train Landwehr, the last pirate versus the Train. Couldn't be more descript on the vibes of this fight. I loved it. It was so scrappy immediately. Like, these are two guys who really do throw caution to the wind. So, you know, similar to the Chris Curtis Max Griffin fight, like there was a lot of hunting, okay, and this was a stander, but differently from that fight, both men were not protecting themselves. Both men were saying, I don't give a rat's tooth about your power. I believe in mine. And we love to see it. And something that's really characteristic of Nate is he does have a high output, and I think I've seen his fights that he really finds himself like in the second round. Like the first round, again, he did get outstruck, not by too much, but that second round he turned it on. He turned it on. And by the end of it, he was screaming. He's like screaming at Morgan as like, you know, bell strikes, and he's like, Rah! He's like screaming. He was on fire, you know, he was feeling it, and he loves the crowd, and the crowd was going. We had a great crowd. Start to finish, Nashville, what a crowd. I mean, a couple of boos here and there, but I would say a pretty hype crowd, and they were so hype. I mean, the place was on fire heading into the third, but we barely even got started in the third before Morgan found his opening. And it took an onslaught, okay? It took a slaughterhouse of punches to really get Nate out of there, but he found it, okay? He found his moment, and this is the classic Morgan finish. That's how Morgan gets his finishes, is he gets really hooky with it, and yeah, you know, eventually Nate's body did shut down, and we got ourselves another knockout. Just knockout, finish, submission, history made, heel hook, history. Man, we couldn't be more spoiled. That was absolutely incredible. I mean, unfortunate that our hometown hero didn't win, but he put on an incredible performance. We got to see 2 rounds of madness. That was amazing. And that led us to another fight with a bit of chaotic energy, at least on one side. Steve Garcia versus Calvin Kattar. Okay. We started out, you know, a little bit feely, a little bit touchy-handsy, high-fivey, you know how it is, a bit, you know, a bit switchy, stancy, just trying to, like, feel each other out, you know, and then it's war. By round 2, it's war because, you know, you can count on Calvin Kattar to throw caution to the wind, which he did, and, you know, Steve kind of got the better of him. Not kind of, he definitely did. So I felt kind of similar to Calvin's last appearance against Yusuf Zalal, where he just didn't seem to be able to catch him. You know, he's like, I was saying, like he's a cat chasing a butterfly with a knife. But he can't quite catch him. You know, he's trying to get him and he can't. You know, he's landing here and there, but he was just taking too much damage for any damage that he would inflict. And Steve was just very technical. He's a very, very technical striker, Steve. That's his, you know, He's Stevie Wonder in there when it comes to the strikes, and he did more. And unfortunately for Calvin, he was able to survive to decision, but not to get the win. And then we have a 5 fight losing streak, and that is, that hurts my heart. The thing about Calvin though is I don't think that means it's over. I hope that it's up to him and that he's not gonna, whatever. I think there's more fights on his contract, hopefully, because he puts on a show. We might be on a bit of a losing streak, but we can always count on Calvin to put on a show. But Calvin really couldn't get in there. It was frustrating. I wanted to see him get in there, but Steve is really good. Steve is incredible. Steve is really on his way. And what's next for Steve? Am I right? And that led us into our co-main event, which deserves a couple of rewatches. I gotta give this one a rewatch. Gabriel Bonfim versus Stephen Thompson. People unreasonably, because Stephen Wonderboy is really Wonder Man. He's 42 years old. That's well into his senior status in terms of fighting. The hair is gray. He's looking great though. He's looking great. But because of this, and because he's coming off of 2 losses, a lot of people say unreasonable things about him being washed up or crazy things like that. But we saw very clearly that Steven is scrappy. Okay, he's scrappy boy Thompson, and yeah. Even when he was taken down, he did his thing. He's, I feel like, always evolving this part of his game where he's just getting back up. Okay, let's get back up, girl. And we got back up. This was such an exciting fight and another split decision like this. And it really was. So let me know where you fall. Who do you think was the winner? Because I know we got some controversy going on, but that fight really got going. We had some crazy moments. Wonderboy on the check kick, his shin gets split to pieces. It's gashed. His leg is gashed open. He gets dropped. He pops back up. It's absolutely crazy. And Gabriel Bonfim is on a tear, on an absolute tear. And Wonderboy Thompson is always game. And that's just the thing about him, is he has that karate mentality, and I really feel he genuinely embodies that in his fighting spirit. He's fighting for growth, and that's all that it is it's a chance to grow and get better as a human being. And you literally see that in there. Oh my gosh, that was crazy. That was scrap reality, start to finish. What a war. Stephen Wonderboy is not done. Wonder Man is not done. He is not done. He is not washed. That was such a great co-main event. Another absolutely competitive fight. Nobody was, for all of our decision fights, Calvin Kattar, that's probably the one that was the most lopsided, but we had absolute bangers for decision. But we had one more finish to get to. So far we've made it. After that decision, we have a total of 7 finishes, and there's an 8th. And there's 1 fight left. So Derek Lewis and Teixeira, that's another, there's a lot of veteran versus youngies. And that was another one. Derek's 40. And he showed his power. Derek does a lot of weird things. The fight starts crazy. He gets rocked right away, after throwing a kick, but, kind of bounces back up. And then he hits Tally with a nasty. Okay, he hits him with a nasty, and it drops him. And he's fallen straight back, stiff into the fence. So Taliesin gets hit, he gets rocked out, body stiff, falling to the ground, and then he's turned his completely away, and both hands are grabbing the fence, just completely. And what that looked like to me is that he was in survival mode, so he wasn't exactly there anymore, and so the fight was stopped, and that's what the ref saw as well. So it was okay, if you're at that point where you're grabbing onto the fence for dear life, it's kind of the equivalent of So let me know what you thought. I thought that was insane. And Derek Lewis is scary Lewis, okay? He's power Lewis. He's domination Lewis. He's loaded Lewis. So as many expected, that fight did not make it out of round 1. I mean, I think most people expected that one to not go to a third, but let me know if you were somebody who thought that Derek Lewis was going to get the finish in round 1, or at least that one of them was going to get the finish in round 1. I think a lot of people expected that, but that was cuckoo crazy, and so Teixeira loses his undefeated streak, but you know what? young man, big future ahead. And if there's one person to get knocked out by, it's gonna be D. Lewis. So, Derek Lewis adds another win to his illustrious knockout record, and he's on his way to the belt. That's what we want. That is what we want. That's what I want. Because that's a lot of fun. And boy, was it a lot of fun. So many incredible finishes. Isn't it? Don't you just want to give everybody performance of the night, fight of the night? So incredible. Just so much beautiful stuff. What a beautiful portrait that was painted in so many of these fights. We had an absolutely lovely team at the desk. Brendan, Laura, and DC. They killed it. It was great. And please, we gotta give a shout out to Laura because her outfit, that was amazing. Laura really knows how to dress. She is one classy lady and she looked so cool, so fly. Okay, we gotta say it. Let me know what your fight of the night was. I feel like mine was probably Gabriel Bonfim and Wonderboy Thompson. We gotta play that one back, right? We gotta watch that one a couple times. But every fight had so much to offer. Not one snooze on the whole card. We had to have a lot of filler thrown in there because of how many finishes, right? We had to get a lot of B-roll of Derek Lewis working out. I think I had seen enough by the end. We had to get a lot of random footage to just throw in there because so many of our finishes were in round 1 as well. What an exciting night. So yes, let me know your favorite moments, anything else. Here's our song of the night. What a crazy night in Nashville. And we have fights every single week until mid-September. So get locked in, everybody. Put your seatbelt on. Because we're going to be here. We're going to be here having a whole dynamic time. It's going to be a really big one next week. We got some fun stuff. All right. That's it. Peace out.